Hello again, my name's Gabe Zollner. You know, I've mentioned this more than once. Muslims that are asked to help other Muslims have no choice but to help other Muslims. Might this explain why Barack Hussein Obama has and is continuing to release the combatants in Guantanamo? If they've asked him to do so, he has no choice. I'm going to attach a link. I'm going to read you most of it, but I want you to see it as a proof source. And the title is Muslims Must Help Each Other. And it starts off by saying there are many hadiths that encourage Muslims to help each other. The Prophet told us that a Muslim is a brother to his fellow Muslims. He should not wrong nor harm him, but rather support him. Anyone who helps his brother accomplish a need or supports him in times of adversity, Allah the Almighty will soothe him on the day of judgment and will grant him peace and safety. There is a hadith in which the Prophet told us that anyone who alleviates the worldly suffering his Muslim brother, Allah the Almighty will alleviate his fear and hardship on the day of judgment. Anyone who relieves a Muslim in distressed circumstances, Allah the Almighty will facilitate matters for him in this worldly life and in the hereafter. And Allah the Almighty supports the slave as long as he supports his brother. Consequently, anyone who exerts efforts to help others achieve their needs based on this encouragement, Allah the Almighty will ease his difficulties. These efforts will also be a reason for his safety on the day of judgment, provided that his intention is to seek the reward of Allah the Almighty. And Allah knows best. What more do you need to know? If there's 300 million radical extremist Muslims, if any one of them ask any one of the over 1 billion Muslims for help, according to the Prophet, they have no choice but to help. That doesn't mean that they themselves would inflict harm on anyone. But at the same time, they have to help a Muslim extremist that they know has already inflicted harm on others. The radical Muslim could approach another Muslim covered in blood. He could be holding the head of a child. Yet if asked to provide shelter and safety, the other Muslim, according to being a follower of the Prophet Muhammad, has no choice but to help. Can you see why it represents a problem for everyone? It represents a problem for those that are not radicalized. The reason being is you can't tell them apart. How do you know if the Muslim approaching you has been radicalized or not? You don't. You have no way of knowing. So what does that do? Well, it instills a number of factors. Fear is one of them. Self-preservation is another. There's a backlash that's taking place throughout Europe. It's not going to just be isolated to Europe. Now, how can the peaceful Muslims help themselves? By not following that part of the Quran. But can a true believer not do that? That, my friend, is the dilemma. That, my friend, is a question that we'll have to wait to see to get the right answer. If they intend to survive, they really have no choice. The Egyptian president has risen up against the radicals. Other Muslim countries recognize the need to do the same. The country that's staying firm, Saudi Arabia. You ever wonder why that might be? Might that explain why those that flew the planes into the Twin Towers were Saudi nationalists? Might that explain why that Saudi young prince that was interwoven in the Boston Marathon bombing was allowed to depart America thanks to the support and assistance provided by none other than Barack Hussein Obama? I'm not trying to fearmonger. All I'm trying to do is make you aware of the obvious. Read the article, do your own research. The web is full of information about Islam, as one might expect. Once again, I feel sorry for those Muslims that haven't been radicalized, because they're going to be put into the same melting pot as those that have been radicalized. I sort of told you what I think. Let me know what you think. I'll attach the link. I provided most of what that link contains. But I also want you to read that so you see that I'm just not just fabricating and making up things to suit the situation. It's scary, folks. We have a president that goes out of his way to protect Islam. We have a president that cannot say Islamic terrorist. We have a president that's ordered the purging of all documents, of all agencies, of any negative connotation towards Islam. The FBI manuals, the military manuals, the Navy manuals, the Air Force manuals. You ever wonder why that might be? I don't. Do you?